welcome everyone. We're glad that Dr. Henderson and Dr. Shakeri were able to join us today. Dr. Henderson is a professor of internal medicine and associate dean of admission for the UC Davis School of Medicine. He is a he's a master at the American College of Physicians and previously was the residency director for internal medicine at University of Texas San Antonio and UC Davis. He has received numerous awards and he's a dean endowed chair in teaching excellence. And he has led various programs and started the ACE Peace Primary Care Program, the Rural Pride Program, and also the new the health disparity and the Compadre program as well. We're glad that he's able to join. I don't know how many times he's joined us, but he's
Thank
probably
That's enough. Thank you, Juven. It's a pleasure and nice to be here and see everyone. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Shadi Aminololama-Shakeri. I'm going to actually go first, and then I'll let Dr. Henderson do his portion, and then we'll both be available for questions that are put into the chat. So I would actually like to, before introducing myself, I want to just share some slides with you, and I'll go through and tell you about my journey. Let me see here. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So today, my portion, I'll be talking about the pathway to medical school success. We're going to try and do a little bit of a step-by-step guide to our UC Davis Medical School. I am the admissions committee chair at UC Davis, and I am a radiologist, a breast specialist. And what I want to do is talk a little bit about my journey, just to let you know. Everybody's journey is a little bit different in the health sciences and to medical school, and then even through medical school. So I am a first-generation immigrant. I came to the United States from Iran at age 15. I won't tell you how many years I've been here, so you can't figure out how old I am. But when I got here, the school system was different. And so I started out in community college and spent a good many years both working and going to community college to take, the basic courses that I needed. And then I attended and got my bachelor's degree from University of California, Berkeley. I worked a couple of years. I actually took some gap years to have a real job in industry. And then I applied, as I was applying to medical school, I didn't get in my first try. I tried again and I got in on my second try. I did not get into any of the UC schools in our great state of California. Now, this is over 30 years ago, I'll tell you. And then I got into Temple Medical School, which was a wonderful fit for me in Pennsylvania. And after that, I actually went on to internal medicine residency at UT Southwestern in the Great Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas. I was cardiology bound. And I was sure I was going to be a cardiologist, but by the time I got my board certification in internal medicine, I had two kids. And so I decided to work as a hospitalist, which is an internal medicine doctor working on inpatients, people who are in the hospital pretty sick. And I was doing this in San Francisco. And after a couple of years, I discovered that, that wasn't after all what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I had to do some rethinking and think back to my time in medical school in terms of what else I liked. If not cardiology, what else was I going to do? And that was radiology for me. I remembered that my last rotation in medical school as a fourth-year student was in radiology, and the woman who was teaching it had been a family practice doctor for 10 years, and then she had switched to radiology, and she had been a radiologist at that point for 10 years. And I remember her saying, you know, nothing is set in stone. You might get into medical school and go into one direction, but you change your mind in terms of your specialty. And at that point, I thought, no, there's no way I'm going to be a cardiologist. But once I realized that, you know what, being a hospitalist isn't for me, I remembered those words that she had said. And so that allowed me to explore the other fields that I had loved, and radiology was it. So I retrained. I did a second residency, and then I did a fellowship in breast imaging, and now I've been at UC Davis in radiology for 20 years. I'm the division chief of breast imaging, which is an area that I really, really love. And so this is what I was meant to do, I feel like. So long story to tell you that you might start in one place and you end up in some place totally different, and that is okay. Everybody's journey is a little bit different into the health sciences and particularly into medicine. So remember that this is a long game. Getting into medical school and getting your career going as a physician is a long road, and it might take a while, and that's fine. You have to remember some things at this stage. Most of you are somewhere along that spectrum of applying probably to medical school. You might just be starting out in a community college or a four-year university. And remember that this is the time for you to be gaining knowledge. You want to be getting those fundamentals down, because those are the fundamentals in the STEM fields that are going to be the building blocks of your medical career. Now, remember that things take time. I remember I had a job when I was in community college. I had more than one job, actually. And so it took me 3 years to just get through the basics at a community college of what I needed to then go on. When I was at UC Berkeley, I chose a major that had a lot of requirements. So it took me a good deal of time to get through my undergraduate career to get all those things done that I wanted to do. Being in a community college has its benefits. It's way cheaper than being in a four-year university, unit per unit. And so you can afford to explore things. And you have access to a lot of support that you should be using. And this is the time again to explore. So not only the STEM classes and courses, but taking all those other things that might have piqued your interest. You want to be taking things that you might be interested in or curious about. So remember that it's a long game, it takes time. Here is just an example of what kind of timing things might take if you were in any of these majors, just taking some basics of the STEM majors that you're going to need. You can see the timing that it could take. And of course, things can take longer depending on what your major is. And remember that no matter where you are, whether you're in community college, you're in a four-year university, if you've transferred, if you're post-transfer and now you're in a gap year, wherever you are in your path to medicine, you are not alone, and you shouldn't be thinking that you should go at it alone. There are advisors and counselors available to you, and you should be using those resources completely to help you on your path. If you're a community college student, remember to approach these supportive resources early. You want to know what are the requirements, what are the general education requirements that you need, what are your transfer requirements that you need. You don't necessarily have to get an associate degree from your community college, but you do want to try and learn very early on what you need so that you can plan out your transfer. And then you want to also start learning about the different colleges that are possible goals for you to transfer to. And you want to do all of that as early as you can. So learn about your requisites, and so utilize your counselors that are available on your campus. Now, a lot of people think about what major should they take to maybe increase their chances of getting into medical school. Some people think that you should only major in STEM, and that is just not true. You can major in anything, I would say, that interests you. What we want to see are people who are passionate about what they're learning. Just remember that alongside that, you do have to take some prerequisite work that shows that you've done some of the STEM field. So you've got to take a year of physics, a year of chemistry, a year of organic chemistry, and a year of biology. And all of that will take time. So if you're going to be an English major because you want to be a writer, that's great. But you have to, if you decide that you're going to medical school in the middle of that, you're going to have to take all of those STEM classes as well. So, and doing well in those STEM classes, especially if you're taking it in a community college environment where classes may be smaller, resources may be more available to you, will allow you to get a better GPA and boost that GPA. And so with all of that will prepare you for your first year in medical school. Let me see here. I've got something hidden that I can't see. Remember that everything that you have that you've attempted will be part of your medical school application. Now, what should you be focusing on while you're getting your undergraduate degree in whatever it is and preparing yourself to applying to medical school? Really, it's not just getting grades, but you want to be focusing on learning that material. Those STEM fields will be the building blocks to what you'll need to know in medical school. You'll need to know your chemistry, organic chemistry, all of that, although it doesn't feel like it sometimes when you're sitting there and doing a lab. All of that is a building block, and it builds the foundation for you to then learn physiology. The kidney physiology lessons in medical school can be pretty difficult. And so you want to help yourself by having a wonderful foundation to build on. I would say alongside learning your material from STEM classes, learn how to study and study well. So get those study skills and get to know yourself and how you study best. You want to build those skills. They will help you once you get into medical school because medical school has a large knowledge load that is going to be presented to you, and you have to be able to handle that. So you want to build your skills before you get here. And practice with the sciences, practice math. All of that is going to be used once you're in medical school in terms of learning all the other things that are going to be taught to you. Now, in terms of your application, you want to remember that once you've fulfilled your requirements, these are not just requirements that you're taking just to be getting a grade. As I said, you're going to be applying that. So the more you can learn about what you need in medical school, what the focus will be on, so what will help you build, the better off you are starting on that early on. And there are lots of networks that can advise pre-medical students. So these are some of those websites that are available to different groups of applicants, and make sure that you are seeking help and looking at these resources. There are also a lot of different conferences that address pre-medical students. Attend those, find out about them, attend them, and ask questions. Make sure that what you're doing is understanding and making a plan with those who can help you. So again, your counselors, your advisors, when you go to these meetings, ask questions so you can make a plan. And that starts out by knowing what you're going to need, not only while you're in community college, but also after you transfer. So getting all those basics for medical school done in the STEM fields is not the only thing. It's not just courses, but there are other things that you're going to need to show that you're interested in doing. One of those is to do something in the medical field. And I would say it's not just something that we look for, like shadowing a physician, working in a clinical environment, but I think that is really important for you as an applicant to know in your heart of hearts if this is really for you. And if you don't put yourself in a clinical situation, how else are you going to know? You know, I know that it feels sometimes like we can glean what medicine is like from a TV show, but it's very, very different. And I think I would say to you, make sure you're doing something clinical. You may have the best grades, the best scores, and think that you would make a terrific doctor, but you get to the clinic and you might hate it. That might not be what you're supposed to be doing, and that is okay. I had somebody shadow me many years ago in radiology, and she thought that she wanted to be a physician, a radiologist. She shadowed me for one day and decided that was just not for her. She's a very successful optometrist today. So take in and do those things so that you can gain knowledge about yourself, in addition to doing these things that you will be compared to other people for in terms of your application. Research is another area that you want to follow your curiosity, your scientific curiosity. You want to go to your professors when you've had a class with them, there's a topic maybe you're interested in, and approach them and say, you know, I really enjoyed that topic. I really enjoyed your class, and I was wondering if you have any research that I could participate in with you. And that's the best way, I think, to get in and try to gain some experience during research. And then other things. We want you to be a well-rounded person as a physician in training. And I think Dr. Henderson is going to go over some of that in his portion, in his slides, in terms of what other experiences we really look for. So don't forget to go to places and look at the opportunities that are provided in pre-health conferences. Often you'll get to meet with people who are looking at your applications. They've got a lot of knowledge and they can advise you. Your instructors, professors, connect with them. If you have access to any advising offices, a pre-med or a student group that's in STEM, make sure that you're going over there and saying, this is the route that I've chosen for myself. Here's my goal. Ask questions, let them help you, let them guide you, and use your summers. Your summers are a wonderful opportunity to get in research experiences, get shadowing experiences. Make sure that you're planning ahead for those. Now, some myth busters. Some people think that, oh, I need to definitely take a very heavy load of science intense courses in community college to show that I can handle this kind of material. While we want to see and know that you can handle scientific material, if you're in community college because you're a non-traditional student who has to have a job, you have a family, don't feel that obligation. Take your classes, learn the material the best you can, and get the best grades that you can. You don't have to do things because you've heard some rumor that, this is something that medical school people want. There's another myth that community college requirements don't count for medical school admissions. That's not true at all. We look at all of that. All of that will be reported, and we'll look at your grades and your specific classes that you took. Staying longer than 2 years at community college is not looked upon favorably. That is also not true. We know that community college education is of vital importance to many of our applicants. And again, it may take time for people to deal with their life situations and their community college education. And it may take more than the average 2 years that people think they should only stay there. So don't let that bother you. Take your own time in your own path. And of course, I've already said medical schools don't accept students that started at community college. That's absolutely not true. We think community college students are a vital part of our workforce. And I'll talk about that in just a second. Don't let getting a C in a class, in a STEM class, stop you from applying to medical school. A lot of people think that this is their great failure, a C in organic chemistry. And it just isn't, I can tell you that. You just want to keep doing the best you can, learn as much as you can, learn from your mistakes and your failures. Another myth is taking the MCAT to see how you would do once, just to figure out what areas you need to work on. I would say absolutely do not do this. Do not just wing it with your first try at the MCAT. This will not favor you. You want to be well prepared. Do everything you can to prepare as much as you can before you make that first attempt. And of course, you don't have to graduate from a UC school to be going to a UC medical school. That's just not true. As I said already, I covered, you don't have to be a science major to go to medical school. You do have to take those prerequisites in STEM, but you can be any major and we want well-rounded people to be physicians. Now, we are all about creating the future workforce. We have an aging society. We need physicians, and we need physicians who are passionate about working within communities that they're interested in working in. And we want to serve our region within California. And so we've talked a lot for a long time about socially accountable admissions, and that means that we believe that as a public medical school, it's our duty to direct our educational efforts, our research efforts, and our service activities towards serving the health concerns of our local community, our local region, our state, and ultimately our nation. And so our strategy has been to really focus on students who come from the communities that have the greatest health needs. And so we want to see applications from people who come from communities where they're passionate about going back to their home communities and serving their populations. And so we like to put our research where our mouth is. And so this is work that was done with Dr. Talamantes and Dr. Henderson and colleagues, showing that we believe in community college students because we know that they are part of the primary care workforce that's going to take care of patients, that's going to take care of our community. And so we do care about community college pathways. And so we have a few efforts that we've undertaken here at UC Davis to do just that. Now, some pro tips to start thinking about, as I said, build your community, build your network now, go to those advisors and counselors, make sure you're keeping track of the activities that you're doing for your application. We want to hear about who you are, what you're passionate about. We don't want to see your CV in a written format in your application essay. We want to know, we want to get to know you, and your application is the window into who you are. And so you want to be authentic. You want to tell us your story, and you don't want to tell us that through ChatGPT. Your words are going to be what is going to touch us and to allow us to get to know you, your circumstances, what you've overcome. Demonstrate to us why you're passionate about medicine and how have you overcome adversity, and how can you demonstrate to us that you've been resilient in overcoming adversity. We want to see all of that. And talk to other people who have some experience in this area, the advisors in your college. Let other people read your application and make sure that what is happening there is the information about you is coming across in an understandable and relatable way. Make sure that you check all of that with someone before putting in your application. The process, really quickly here, the primary application, it's one general application put in through this service put together by the American Medical College Application Service, or AMCAS. You're going to have to put in biographical information, all about your coursework, your transcripts, your MCAT scores are going to be part of that. All of the work activities that you've done that I would say are relatable. You may have done a lot of things, but the most relatable things to medicine are what you want to put in there. You're going to need letters of recommendation. And one word about that, when you ask someone for a letter of recommendation, don't just approach the person and say, can I have a letter of recommendation? Make sure you're asking the people who can write you a really good letter of recommendation. And the way to ask that is to say, Dr. So-and-so or Professor so-and-so, do you think, I would really appreciate it if you would write me a letter, but do you think you're able to write me a good letter of recommendation or a great letter of recommendation? Often people who don't know you very well or don't think they can write you a great letter will say, you know what, I think you might be better off asking someone else. You're better off that someone rejects you and you look for someone who can write you a great letter of recommendation than just the average letter of recommendation. So think carefully about who you ask. And then your personal statement will be as part of that. Once you've passed through some screening, we will ask you some secondary questions about you. This is more information. Every school asks some specific school-specific questions. And then you may get invited to do an interview. And we interview not the traditional way, but we have 10 different stations, for example, that will ask you questions in. Some other schools may have the traditional one-on-one type interviews. So there are different ways to go through that. And then there will be committees that will meet and look at applications to make a final decision. For us, UC Davis School of Medicine, you need to take the MCAT within 36 months of applying. Again, do not wing that first try. You want to be prepared to take it. And we need a bachelor's degree as a requirement. And then we need those courses that I talked about previously. Your personal statement. Again, this is a story and our window into who you are. Think in terms of when did you first want to do medicine? What sparked that interest in doing medicine? What have you done? We want to hear what kind of experiences have you had? And how did that help you grow this passion for medicine? And how do you think you're going to contribute to the field of medicine? So tell us about you, paint us a picture of who you are and why you want to do this as a career. Remember, navigating a career field of medicine is going to be complex. There are lots of bends in the road. Ask for help, even if it's not in your nature to ask for help. Even if the culture that you were brought up in says that you would be a failure if you have to ask for help. Asking for help is a strength, and you want to learn to do that now because that is going to empower you once you are in medical school and beyond. When you're a physician, you need to be able to have the capacity to ask for help, not think that you must do it alone always. My daughter always says, even Einstein, if he were making an apple pie from scratch, would have some questions. So don't think that you're the only person who should be doing this by yourself and without any help. Make sure that you always pursue your scientific curiosity, always. And remember that if you're uncertain, that means that it's an opportunity for growth. Don't look at that. It might be frustrating, but don't look at uncertainty as a failure. Look at it as an opportunity that you can have exposure to a great breadth of things and learn from them and allow your passion to grow. You are on the precipice of greatness. Make sure that you absorb what you're learning now, ask questions, and assess and reassess in terms of where you're going. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop sharing, and Dr. Henderson will take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shakeri. And remember, we're going to take questions at the end, and I know there are a lot of questions in the chat already, which we'll try to answer again. I think some of them overlap, but anyway, we'll get to them. I'm going to show a few slides that just build a little bit on the medical school, um, the approach to applicants who apply to UC Davis. So this is an example. It's one school, but again, some of the things will apply to other medical schools as well. So let me share here. Let's see. Share my screen. Here you go. Okay. So I think you can see my slides now. So just a bit about the school. Again, the UC Davis is a big trauma center. It's a primary care school fundamentally. That doesn't mean everyone goes into primary care, but about half of our students or so end up going into primary care fields, and the other go into specialty fields. So it's a kind of a balance, but that half of the students going to primary care makes us in the top 10 of nationally. Um, I think Dr. Shakeri mentioned our school is focused on meeting the health workforce needs of California. There are many workforce needs in California, many communities of need, many communities that lack physicians and lack healthcare. The school was a very diverse school, and that reflects in large part the community which we serve as a public institution, which is California. Um, Again, our mission areas are listed on this slide: service to populations of California, particularly in northern and central valleys of California, and in underserved communities in our state. I think Dr. Shakeri went over this. These are just the basic requirements that are you have to take the MCAT. You have to have at least 3 years of college. Most of our students have a bachelor's degree, and then there's these requirements of a year of chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, and biology. Again, these are pretty standard across the country. These are our requirements are a little simpler than many schools. This is just a sense of how many applicants apply to UC Davis. You can see 8,000 applicants. We about half of those applicants get a full application. What that means is that they are encouraged or requested to submit letters of recommendation and answer a secondary set of questions that are unique to UC Davis. So again, about half of those who apply get that application, and then of those 3,500, about 1 in 7 of those get an interview. So 500 interviews. So getting to the interview stage is quite difficult, I would say. And then of those 500 interviews, we end up with between 130 and 140 students each year. We do something called holistic review. I mean, this is something that applies to applying to college as well. That is that each candidate is considered in a as an individual, one, and in a holistic manner, meaning they look at many different qualities, and I'm going to talk about them in a minute. And then we try to match those qualities with the mission of the institution. So I'm going to talk about UC Davis, but different schools have different missions, and of course they would look at various qualities or qualifications differently. So it really depends on the school. We're going to try to give general advice that applies to many schools. And in general, the types of experiences, I can Dr. Shakeri already alluded to these. I guess the only ones I would add from this list that she didn't mention would be employment. Again, many individuals like her and others have to work during college, and that's a fact. And so, but there, I will say that there are many qualities and skills and experience that people gain from working that applies to healthcare, particularly if you work in an industry where customers are involved, because fundamentally our patients are our customer, and we try to provide them the highest possible service. So I think working cannot, even if it's not in healthcare, can have relevance to healthcare. So don't be afraid to discuss what you've been doing as a job if you had to work. Um, Again, we work in medicine in an interprofessional team, the nurses, social workers, clerks, phlebotomists. There's many different kinds of people involved. It's not just physicians. So the kinds of work experiences or other experiences that can kind of demonstrate that you are able to work with other people are really helpful to a medical school application. I think she covered most of the others. Community service. We talk about distance traveled. The reason we emphasize that is because many of our patients travel a long distance to see us, not just in the miles they drive if they're from an area that lacks healthcare providers, but sometimes it's very difficult because of all kinds of socioeconomic barriers, poverty, lack of education. They're working. It's just hard to access healthcare. So when physicians understand those challenges, I think we believe they make better providers of healthcare. They have better understanding and empathy with their patients. These are some of the other attributes that we look at that are, kind of part of the holistic approach we use. Communication skills. Again, many different experiences can build your communication skills. In medicine, we need advanced communication skills because uh, oftentimes the patients are, they're sick or they're upset or they're in pain or they're worried. So these are, make communication even more important than routine sort of interactions with people. Um, Trying to think of the others. We've talked, our California is a very multicultural place, as you all know. So people who are able to communicate in more than one language is a huge advantage in a state like California. Honestly, many states. It's not just California. Again, we have um, a very diverse country, and get again, particularly our state. So things that allow you to build relationships with many different kinds of individuals are going to be an advantage. Um, Critical thinking, that's obvious. There are a lot of difficult problems, so problem solving abilities, and this is gets back to, well, what do I need to major in? Doesn't really, I don't think it matters actually, as long as it's a major where you are able to cultivate your ability to think critically and solve problems, because again, our patients come to us in medicine with problems that they want us or would like us to help them solve. Metrics, which is what everybody worries about, which are the grades. The reason I put this slide in is because we, it's not just about, let's say, a single grade point average. There are many other contextual factors. That, some people go to college and they work, then they come back and they do a graduate degree or a post-baccalaureate program. We consider all those things, not just one. The trend of people's grades, they might start off low. You might get a C in organic chemistry, like Dr. Shakeri said, but that's not a deal breaker. I think it's really the trend that we look at, and we look at the MCAT. But again, there's no single MCAT either. We again, holistic review means you don't look at a single factor, or one single factor is not going to make you or break you. It's really the whole package, looking at the whole thing in context together. Um, I'm just going to mention this situational judgment test is a new assessment that's done now that many schools require. So I wanted you to be aware of it. It's a test that applicants take. It's an online test that gives applicants scenarios where they have to make an ethical or uh, judgment about a situation. These are not medical at all, because you don't have to have medical knowledge, but this has been developed by the Association of American Medical Colleges, and so we have just begun to use it at UC Davis, but many medical schools in California and across the country are using it. So that's something I just wanted you to be aware of. It's called Preview. That's the name of the situational judgment test. So it's how this is used in the process really depends on the school. At UC Davis, we don't rely heavily on it at all, but because other schools require it, we are requiring it, and we are beginning to learn how to use it. It's supposed to, the idea is that it correlates to people's ability to make ethical judgments in healthcare. Just again, a bit about UC Davis, that the unique features of it, something called the Community Health Scholar Pathways. Almost a third of our students are in one of these pathways. There are five of them. I've put their logos on the bottom of the slide. These are, have to do with communities in California who need physicians, where there are shortages of physicians, or where patients have had difficulty accessing care. So rural Californians, Californians that live in the Central Valley, migrant communities, tribal communities. And then we have a dedicated primary care tract, which is called ACE-PC, which I think Jubin mentioned at the outset. So all these pathway programs, they have a mission to train future physicians to serve a particular underserved community of California. So they have the standard medical school training, but then they get additional training in the community of need. These are smaller programs, so they're usually 8 to 10 students, and there's a cohort that goes through medical school together. They also start a little bit early so that they can learn a little bit about what the unique skills, let's say, of serving in rural California might be. Let's see. And then I think this is just a little bit about our pathway programs. These are, again, prior to medical school, the Health Equity Academy, Avenue M, which I'm not going to talk about in depth, but it's basically a program that links gives community college students mentoring and advice and assistance with transferring to a four-year university like UC Davis or Sacramento State University or Cal Poly Humboldt. Those are some of our partners. Um, we have a post-baccalaureate program. We actually have two at UC Davis. And then we have the MS PEP program, which is aimed at, there's a chapter at UC Davis. Again, it's aimed at enriching students who might not have had connections or other opportunities to be able to prepare to apply to medical school. I'm going to stop there. Let's see. Yeah. And I think we have, yeah. So Dr. Shakeri is going to come back as well, but I think we have time for questions now. And I know there are a bunch in the chat. I don't know if Jubin, you want to try to go live or just go through the questions in the chat?
Yeah, I think you've answered a bunch of them. I've tried to answer a bunch of them. So people are asking, this is something we could just knock it out right now. People are asking if I have a 501, 502, 506, MCAT, all of these numbers. I posted the average and the range in the chat. And do you want to just touch on that a little bit? So
Sure,
any
sure.
other question that come after that, hopefully this will be answered.
Yeah, let me see what you put in the chat.
I
Is
just put the MSAR and then also
Oh,
the,
okay.
the
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
matriculated
Yeah.
data.
Yeah. It's a great question. So the answer is, and I think um, it really depends on the rest of your application. So there's not a single MCAT score that's going to guarantee your admission. There are averages, but remember with averages, right? There are many individuals who have MCAT scores, but like I think the average MCAT score at UC Davis is, I can't remember what it is, 508.
509, I think
I
it
will
was
eight
509.
something like that, Jimmy. So, but I will tell you that there are students with MCATs of 500 in our school. They're individuals with MCATs much higher. So there's a range. So that's the problem with sort of hanging your hat on one number. So really, I think if your MCAT score is below where you want it to be, what I would suggest is bolstering the other parts of your application or considering taking it again. I think people often though focus too much on getting just the MCAT score and then they ignore the other parts of the application that both of us have talked about. And those are just as important. They're just harder to get your hands around. They're not a number. What else could I say? The other thing is, if you don't feel like you gave it your best shot, if you weren't, I don't know, there's so many situations where you might have been at a disadvantage when you take an MCAT. If you can, in that case, sometimes it's worth doing it again. If you can prepare or get yourself ready to have your best sort of performance. Um, so again, it's just one part of the application, and there's not a single score. So I think there was a question about, yeah, there were several questions. Any of those might work. Depends on the school too. Remember, certain schools have more of a focus on other things than other schools. You really have to kind of look into the mission of the school, and make sure you build those other aspects of your application.
The other question is a lot of people are asking about the Teach MS, ACE-PC, Rural
Mm,
Prime,
mm, yeah,
ARC, MD. Can you just tell them
sure.
that you don't apply for those programs? It's you know, talk about the
That's
importance of
yeah.
getting into the
Yeah,
school
yeah,
versus
that's a great question. So yeah, thank you for that question. I didn't mention ARC, which is ARC-MD, which is a research track. I think the slide I used was before we started that, so I apologize. But so yes, each of those pathway programs are part of our secondary applications. So the 8,000 primary applications, you would you can indicate interest, but there's nothing more than checking a box at that point. You would have to make it to the secondary stage of our application to apply for one of those pathway programs. And in that secondary stage, you would answer questions that are unique to that pathway program, as well as your application would be screened by individuals who are very familiar with, let's say, the rural training program. But just to kind of talk about it a little bit, people in the rural prime program, we value or we put a lot of emphasis on experience in rural communities, growing up in a rural community. And there are many rural communities in California, and I'll tell you, the healthcare access and the density of healthcare providers in those communities is so different from, let's say, where I'm sitting right now, which is in San Francisco today. And there's a very big maldistribution of physicians in California. They're concentrated in the urban areas like San Francisco, LA, San Diego, and they're deserts, figuratively and literally, of physicians throughout the Central Valley, but in particularly north of Sacramento, all the way to the Oregon border. So anyway, I think it depends. Those programs really, I think my advice on those is, if you have experience in those target communities, then indicate your interest. But it's again part of our secondary process. And as Jubin said, you have to get into the medical school before you can then even be considered for those programs. I don't know if did I answer Jubin or okay.
The moral of the story is get in the medical school before starting to worry about those specific programs. It's much hard. Once you're in the medical school, you could make those choices, right? So,
Yep.
um,
Or at least, again, you get to the secondary stage of the application. And many schools will have, they will have, just like your college application, they'll have a unique set of essays that are more unique to what the institution's mission is. And that's where you would encounter these programs in our application process.
and this is the question that only Dr. Shakeri could answer is how did you have a family, have children while being a physician and in training and other parts of your career?
I have three children, and I had all three of them in my residencies. And let me just say that it was challenging, but at some point you realize there is no good time, there is no perfect time. And then being a parent, as a physician is not any easier than just having those children in residency. So it's something that if that's what you want and you want to have a family, you just have to make it work. Now, that sounds very easy to say. If you have family members that can help you out, that's huge. But if you don't, then you just seek help within your community. Honestly, when I was a resident, a medicine resident, my husband and I were in the same program, and we would take call every 3 nights. And his parents from Puerto Rico moved across the street from us, and took care of our 1-year-old daughter for the first year. That second year was the year that we had graduated, and then I was working as a hospitalist. So I looked in our community, in the Mission District, which is where we worked, and I found a home place. I don't know what it's called now, but sort of a home place
Home
that took
care.
care of home care. Thank you. So I would bring the two kids and drop them off, and then go to my hospital down the street. And that's how I did it that time. I was lucky enough that by the third child in radiology, my father was able to help me out. But my father lives in the Bay Area, and then he drove every day about an hour to come help so that I could finish residency and then start in my job. So if you can have family, wonderful. If you can't have family, find those resources, find your village, you can do it. It's not impossible. It's hard, but it's not impossible.
It takes a village. Um, this is one question that's come up also in a couple other places is what are some of the common mistakes you see applicants do, and what would you advise for them to avoid?
Mm. Um, that's a great question. In the applications that we review, I would say putting down things you think we want to hear. If you think we want to hear something, that makes your application not authentic. We are looking for people who are their authentic selves, can communicate their passion for why they want to do medicine and where they want to do medicine. What is it that they want to do when they're physicians? We want to hear your authentic voice. Don't tell us ever what you think we want to hear. People on the committee can smell that a mile away.
I would only add to that that advice holds throughout the process. So even when you, if hopefully, and when you get to the interview process, the same advice applies. Trying to be somebody else that you think, again, the school wants to hear is a mistake. Uh, and we can, and yeah, we can see it, feel it, hear it, whatever. So anyway, it's tempting. I'll just say that. Try to be yourself.
Yes. They're very smart people. This is a question asking about AP credits. How do medical schools accept that?
Aren't you mean AP credits from high school? AP credits will apply to your college credits. And I think what we're looking, you need to fulfill those requirements of 1 year of inorganic chemistry, 1 year of organic chemistry, 1 year of physics. That's a good question. I think that as long as your college has accepted that as credit, then it's part of your transcript, and we accept it as far as I know. Do you know something different, Dr. Henderson?
No, yes, yes, we accept, again,
Yeah.
it's really part of that meeting your degree requirements for your undergraduate degree. So there's no reason why we wouldn't. And anyway, yes, we do.
People want to know how many hours of community service you need to have to get into medical school. It's my favorite question.
Oh, you know what? I would say it's not for my answer, I would say it's not really about the hours. It's about the quality and the passion that you've put into it. And it's something that you've wanted to do. And same goes for research. I would say it's not just a number of what you did, but the quality of what you did. So some people put, thousands of hours in some place and when we do the math, it doesn't all add up. But it's really the quality of what you've done. Is it something that you were passionate about that you did? Research, for example, if you put in whatever number of hours of research that you did, but you get to a stage where you really can't talk about the research. If we're in an interview and I ask you about your research and you can't expand, then that's very disappointing. I would say know very well about the things you did. And I'll say this, I'll go to research again, the research experience. My first research experience was in a lab I really thought I would enjoy working in, but then I ended up just washing the beakers and this and that. The problem is when you want to talk about your research experience, what are you going to say? That I was the dishwasher? Then if that was what you did, it's okay to say that, but then know something about what the lab was studying. You've got to know something about your experience and what the lab was doing. What was the big question they were pursuing? And it is okay to say, and my role was to help the other people, and this is what I did. So know about what you're doing. You delve deeply into what you're doing.
The other question, oh, sorry, Dr. Henderson.
No. I'm just trying to type answers to some of the questions. No, I don't have any, I agree with what Dr. Shakiri said.
Um, they want, this is another question, is they want to know is what kind of clinical experiences do you want to see people do while applying to medical school?
You know, you go ahead, Shadi.
Um, to me, it's important to see that you've been in a clinical situation. To tell you the truth, there are many different types of experiences that we look for. I look for you to have a heart of service. You have to be able to work with people. You have to want to serve people. That's who we are. Physicians are servants to their patients. So you need to have a heart of service. You can show that in any way that you want. You could work at your local church. You could work at a food pantry, soup kitchen, wherever you want to work at. But that's separate from the medical environment. I look for someone who's also had some experience in the medical environment for the reasons that I said, because I want to know you've been there and seen what's done. And so that you're still wanting to pursue this. Any any type of medical environment is okay as long as you're working, you have to have the ability to work with a medical team. Those are things that we want to see that you've tried and experienced.
The
Yeah.
question, oh, sorry.
No, no, I was just going to add that again. It's not one. You have to sort of be. You have to get the experiences that you can. Some people have access to, again, depending on where you live, whether you're working, what some it just depends on your situation. So you gotta. We list these things, but none of them are, again, absolutely required. It's really going to be, you're going to be considered on an individual basis. I'll tell you for myself, one of the best experiences that I think prepared me best for medical school was working in a restaurant as a busboy for 3 years. Now think about that. That people think, oh, it has nothing to do with medicine. I mean, every day you learn stuff about people, about service, about anyway. I just, again, it depends on you and what you can do. None of these things are the end all. There are certain, we like clinical experiences, but again, some people just haven't had the opportunity to get a lot of them, or research experiences. If you can have access to something like that, it's great. But again, some people don't, and we try to consider people in that context.
I'm just going to add one quick thing to that because you mentioned that example. One of the best letters of recommendation I have read has been from a restaurant manager about an applicant who was their coffee tender, I don't know what, a barista in the restaurant, a very fancy restaurant. And what the description with which this applicant would apply himself to, and the pride he had in the way he made the coffee for the people in the restaurant. This description of this manager of the restaurant spoke so much to the qualities that this applicant would bring to us as a medical student. And I'm telling you, that was one of the best and most memorable letters of recommendation that I've read to this date.
Yeah, and I think this has also come up a couple of places, is that yes, UC Davis values primary care, but they also have this really, really, really big hospital that has an ER, a trauma center, radiology. So you could have all your clinical experiences in various areas. And because for some folks, like primary care may not be something that they're really interested in, and you have an interest in another area. And so you should probably excel in what you enjoy doing versus what you think Dr. Henderson wants to read, because, he's a kind of a blank slate when he reads your experiences. And I could speak this from knowing him for a bit. But so yeah, so a lot of you guys are asking, do I have to do primary care experience or those types of things? And
You get what you can. Again, it's yeah, no. So I mean, any experience is good experience. And there's a lot of questions. There's so many questions. I'm a little bit overwhelmed about. I don't know.
I'll try
Okay,
to
okay. Thank you.
group them. I've done this a few times, so yeah. And so some people are asking about, like, should I do an EMT? Should I do medical assist? Like, do what you enjoy. Like, I work in the ER, and my personality is very much, if you put me in a primary care clinic, I'll probably like break glasses and walk over it just because it's just really slow paced for me. Or, and so people have different interests, and I think it's having you thrive in what you're interested in. Like, the analogy is, all of us want to run the marathon and win the Olympic gold medal. But the first thing you got to do is you got to first start and being able to run a mile under, 10 minutes or whatever. And so you got to be able to do that. And so whatever you find and whatever your interest is, do that. This is a a lot of people are asking questions about like, do you do a do-it-yourself post-bac? Do you do a special master's program? Do you do a formal post-bac program? And we've had Dr. Compa speak a few times, but can you both touch on that a little bit? Like what's the best, what you want to see people do post-bacs in and how?
I can tell you, I'll go first maybe. I think a post-bac is a great idea if you're someone who, for whatever reason, and whatever circumstances, you did not have a chance to get the greatest GPA you could get as an undergraduate um, uh, person. So if you think that you're missing in that area, if your GPA is not high enough, then that's a post-bac, a formal post-bac is a great opportunity to raise your GPA. But any kind of post-bac work where you can take and show us that you can handle, a load of scientific material, is valuable. Some people need that structure of a formal post-bac to make sure that they're also getting great mentorship and advice, and that works for them very well. And help, and again, guidance to take their MCAT and really optimize their score. So for some people that works best. And for others, maybe you were always interested in public health and you wanted to go get a master's in public health. It really does depend on you, your interests, and what is maybe an area that could be improved upon. So I would look at that. If there's no real prescription here.
And I'm still looking at questions. Do you want me to add something, Shadi? I don't know. I was trying to answer. Yeah, I was.
If you, there's a question that's at the very bottom that relates to this, that someone's asking about their poor GPA in undergrad and how do we look at it?
Yeah.
We take things in consideration if you explain them to us.
Yeah.
If you tell us you were going through something as an undergrad, or you just didn't have your act together, simply, when you were an undergrad. And so your GPA wasn't great, but now it's years later. It could be 10 years later, and now you know that this is going to be your ultimate goal to get here. And now you've taken coursework and you've improved your undergraduate GPA or your GPA overall with whatever coursework you're taking now. We look at all of that. We don't just look at bits and pieces. It's not just a checkbox for us. We look at you as a whole person. We look at the whole picture. And that's why it's so important to answer those secondary questions and put things in your personal statement in an authentic way so we understand who you are, what circumstances you went through.
I think if you do a post-bac, whether it's a formal program, I mean, the advantage of formal programs, I think, often is that they come with many times they're targeted towards individuals who have maybe not been successful, like the UC Davis program, for instance, post-bac, the Dr. Campa you heard from, I guess, earlier in the season. That program is for individuals who, have often tried or think that there's some part of their application that needs to be enhanced. Oftentimes that's studying for the MCAT, but oftentimes it's other parts of the application as well, or some type of core science preparation that they need to work on. So it really depends on where you think you would like to improve your application. So the GPA, I think oftentimes when we see candidates who maybe their GPA wasn't what they wanted in college, but they did a post-bac or a special master's, the higher GPA in if it's again it's not just a GPA, it depends on what the courses were. If it were in courses that we consider to be important for medical school, some of the science courses in particular, then it can really help you. I think sometimes a GPA in a graduate program may not, that doesn't have to do with some of the sciences that are fundamental to medical science, physical science, biological or biochemistry, then I think it maybe makes less of an influence. But I do think if you're gonna do a post-bac, if you're gonna do an advanced degree, the GPA in that, whatever that degree is, will be considered by most programs, certainly ours. Um, yeah, yeah. There's another other questions about sort of individual. Someone asked about, do medical schools give fewer opportunities to applicants in their 50s? I don't, you know, not very many individuals in their 50s apply to medical school. That's just a fact. I just think that's because people are living and working their lives. We've definitely had medical students in their 50s at UC Davis. I think that's a bit unusual, but um, again, I wouldn't discourage you. It really depends on the reason, the why, and the path. And so, for instance, some individuals have had a career in, I don't know, nursing, or something that's or peripheral to medicine, or maybe it's not even in medicine, but it really depends on the why, what your why is. I would be thinking more about that than just the objective fact of your age. I don't, there's no age requirement, low or high, actually.
In fact, we don't look at that at
Yeah,
all.
we don't look at that. That's correct. We look at your experiences.
This is a good question. They said they've heard that at UC Davis you have to have a gap year in order to apply to medical school.
I
Not
love
true.
it. That's not true.
Not true.
Um,
Many people do. I said that in the chat. Many of our students have had gap years, but it's not required, and many
Mhm,
students don't have gap years. Yeah, it depends on the student.
mhm.
um, the other question is they wanted to know about when do you get early clinical experience at UC Davis, and
And
can
that's
you,
easy. Our
yeah.
students get a lot of early clinical experience. They all have a clinical experience in their first year. Um, Students that are in one of those pathways, the CHS pathways I alluded to, about 30% of our students, rural prime, ASPC, et cetera, they all start to get clinical experience very intense in the summer after first year, between first and second year. But all the students get um, some type of experience first and second year. In terms of the question about underserved populations, I mean, you get all kinds of experience in the third year, the clerkship year. Most of the experiences I would say are with underserved communities. That would be different at a place where, let's say, there was a private hospital. Let me just say, I don't know, Cedar Sinai. That would be an example of the kinds of clerkship experience that would be very different from what you get at UC Davis, different population. But the underserved populations, I think you have plenty of that, a lot of it. Let's say that way.
And there's a lot of opportunities. You could be involved in street medicine, free clinics. Um, this is another question coming about gap years again, and people wanting to know what if you have to take gap years due to economic reasons?
Yeah,
Like,
that's okay. Like you have to work a job. Some people have to, help take care of family members. There are all kinds of circumstances. As long as you're telling us what has been happening with you, and how that's applied. Now, let me tell you this, I will say, um, you're somebody who, applied to medical school once, you didn't get in, you're in the middle of a gap year now, and you decided to go travel the world. And that's fine. If you tell us that you needed that time to go travel the world to learn more about yourself, it's okay. But you should also have had some period of reflection to say, you know what, I applied and didn't get in. And these were my areas of weakness, and this is what I decided I was going to work on. So what I would suggest to you is if it's a gap year between the time you applied and got rejected and you're going to apply again, make sure that you tell us what you did to change your application. Because otherwise, if you didn't reflect, didn't see that, okay, maybe you needed more clinical work, but instead you decided that you were going to travel and go learn French in Paris for a year, which is again fine. But then we we wonder, okay, if you're really serious about having a career in medicine, why didn't you choose something to improve your application or gain your experiences to really test whether you want to be in medicine or not? There's nothing wrong with going and doing something totally non-medical. I want to make sure I say that. But if you're in a position to improve your application, show us that you did something in that end.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, I would echo that and only say, like, as I think about experiences that individuals I've seen in gap years do that are really, really encompass many of the qualities that are required in medicine, I would say one that is particularly uh, I don't know, meaningful to us is something like the Peace Corps. Now, not many people do the Peace Corps, but there's a lot you get from that experience that pertains to, the culture of the heart of service, adaptability, flexibility, working with people, language acquisition, so many things. Again, that takes 2 years, but that's going to make a big difference. That's going to make up, I mean, again, it's going to really distinguish an applicant. So I just would mention that one thing just as an example. It's not medical. Anyway,
People wanted to know about um, if you are doing a if you want to do research, can it be clinical research? Can it be bench research? Can it be sociology research?
Anything, anything that you are interested in and can get engaged in. And then you can talk about why it was interesting to you and, why you pursued it and what you did and what you learned from it. Anything that interests you, I would say, follow your curiosity. Doesn't matter whether it's clinical, non-clinical, it could be in botany, because you think that that's how you're going to discover the next pharmaceutical, that's going to, cure diabetes.
well, or if you had a research mentor that was a particularly inspiring person that you thought you could learn a lot from, and you did research with them, yeah, it could be botany. And it would, the method of research is something that's long, it's hard, there's more failure than success. Many lessons that apply to a career in medicine. So I agree that the content of the research doesn't matter. It's whether you understand it, whether you kind of dedicated yourself to it, whether you, learned what you learned from that, um, is important.
Um, no, this is also wanting to know if you have a disability, would that hinder you for getting into medical school and succeeding?
Go ahead, Shadi. I know you're going to answer. I know how you're going
No,
to.
I was just gonna say no. No, simply no.
No, in fact, I would say we've had a number of students with disabilities that have made our school stronger and made our community stronger. Uh, yeah, I could give you actually several examples. So, yeah,
Yeah, no, I remember we had a resident who was deaf in
yeah,
internal medicine,
yeah,
and then
yeah. That's
also,
Chris Moreland, and Chris
yeah,
Moreland has gone on to do amazing
Mhm.
things, actually, still today. That's who you're talking about. He's a
yeah,
great example. And we've had others too. And
yeah,
I'll tell you that patients with his disability came out of the woodwork to try to see him as their physician. He made an incredible difference here at UC Davis. So yeah, we really
and
miss him.
I've also seen one in the wheelchair. I've seen one of my really good friends is a ortho orthopedic surgeon, and he's dyslexic. Um, People want to ask about veterans, and would that hinder you being a veteran?
At all. Those are experiences that actually bring qualities that we value. Yeah.
And we also, then UC Davis has a lot of Air Force and other military people that rotate through there.
We
Mhm.
do. We have a number of affiliations, both with Travis Air Force Base, so the active duty Air Force physicians come to UC Davis Medical Center in the trauma program, the heart surgery, as well as internal medicine. There's a partnership. And then we also have a VA hospital at the Mather Field, which is where our students and residents also get part of their training. So, no, being a veteran is definitely not a disadvantage. I say it's an advantage.
People also wanted to know about if you are if you're in if you are doing when do you have to decide what kind of specialty you want to do, or do you have to know that before coming into medical school?
Didn't you hear Dr. Shakeri tell her story?
I know.
No, you at some point you're going to be applying for residency. So at some point you have to make a choice to be able to put in your applications to residency. But you know, there's never an end. I think there's a saying that we change our careers 3 times in our lives. Careers. I've already changed mine twice, but no, I think you need to in medical school really learn about what you love. And I mean really love. And the way I think you learn that is to think to yourself, what could I do 24 hours in a row, maybe 7 days a week, and not get paid? And that would be okay. I'd still want to do it. So that's what you're looking for. That's how I think I would explain about picking a specialty. A lot of it has to do with your personality. What kind of person are you? Are you afraid of procedures? Do you want to do procedures? You love that. Are you an adrenaline type of person? Like you heard Dr. Afshar say, you know, you want to be in that ED environment. Are you somebody who wants to see a whole family of patients? So those are things you're going to discover about yourself through the medical school journey as you decide what residency you're going to go to, and that's going to determine your specialty.
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
I think it just I agree. I think people they worry about this. My wife is an oncologist, and she says something that I think is true about this, which is that you don't choose your specialty, that your specialty chooses you.
it's so
And
true.
but
Yeah.
how well, you have to have experiences that somehow get you to that place and find them. So it's something that you can't, I think, for many people don't plan ahead of time until they enter or have the experiences. Again, like Dr. Shakiri said about her experience. Um, and what I thought I was going to do is completely different from what ended up happening. So,
This is another question is can introverts go into medicine?
You know, I consider myself an introvert. And the answer is absolutely a yes. Introverts tend to be quieter and thoughtful people who don't necessarily have to be the person doing all the talking, even though I'm doing some of the talking here today. But yes, absolutely. And we do consider that. We think about it actually in the committee. We talk about this all the time. Extrovertedness versus introvertedness and how you might come across. And it's fine. You know, we have patients are all sorts of people, and their physicians need to be all sorts of people, right? We need to be able to interact with patients. And you will find your way as an introvert how to deal with some of those situations that you think you don't want to deal with because you're not an extrovert, but you do find the ways.
Um, this is also how so this is about letters of recommendation. How do letters of recommendation stand out, and also what type of letters of recommendation should be?
The
yeah.
letters of rec, I mean, we talked a little bit about this. Get the letters. I read in the comments, somebody asked the professor who said, I'm not gonna write you a personal letter, but I'll talk about how you did how you ranked in the class. You know, that's just the average letter. That person is gonna write about themselves as the first paragraph, that I'm professor of so and this is what I do, and this is how much dollars in terms of grants I've got, and this is my project. And then they'll talk about so-and-so, it was, you know, in the top 15% in my class. That tells us nothing about you. Um, if you have the options, and so you want to get to know those professors, go to those office hours, get to know the professors, let them get to know you and why you are interested in doing this, so that they can write something personal about you. That's what matters. That's what we need to know. We are looking for every opportunity to get to know you. And so that's the letter we want. You know, it doesn't matter that somebody says you're in the top 1% of their class in their entire career. Everybody writes that.
Well, and also I think we can get that kind of information from other parts of the application. What we can't get is what was just said, who you are as a what they've seen of you as a person, maybe if they've seen you in a job or if you've worked in their lab over a long period of time. Again, the better you think that individual knows you as a person and can comment on your character, that's the kind of letter that kind of makes a difference. And many letters, let's be honest, they don't make much of a difference because they come out like what Dr. Shakeri said. They're just like superficial, or they're how the grade you got in the class. Um, Again, that's on your transcript, so it doesn't really add much.
Yeah, I think you said like the worst letter recommendation is to read, you know, Joe was in my class and he scored in the 91 percentile of uh of my class and showed up on time, and it's like, and did good grades. Like you're supposed to do that for any class. So but the personal ones are really really the most important one. And then the other part of it, two people asking about what should their most meaningful experience be. These are very repetitive, but it's kind of like you got to beat it down that, it's an individual thing, right?
It is, absolutely. I think what was most meaningful to you, um, and I would say in general, when you're trying to answer that question, maybe think to yourself, um, you know, what have I done for someone else lately? Sort of a thought process. What experience allowed me to do something for someone that made a difference to them? So whether that's in your in the research realm, or if that's in your clinical work that you did, you want to be able to talk about an experience that was important to you in a way that shows us that you are someone who's interested in making the world better in terms of medical service, in terms of serving someone else, right? If you put that you were the wrestling champion as your most meaningful activity, then I want to know how that relates to you becoming a physician. So I would say it's all in your judgment of what's the most meaningful experience you've had.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to again and see. I'm looking at some of these questions that where people have had experiences like nursing in undergraduate or they're pursuing medical assisting. And is that a problem? It's not. Nursing is a great preparation for medicine. I don't, yeah, and so I think again, something you love, something you have access to, something you're passionate about, all of those things are good preparation for applying to medical school. Um, Trying to see. Yeah, I loved worked as a CNA and loved it. Then you should keep doing it. I mean, that again, that's the kind of experience. There's so much to learn from any kind of patient-facing experience. Is good.
People wanting to know about, should they do nursing first and then go to medical school?
I would say there's no must of anything. There's no must of anything. We don't prioritize, you know, someone who's had one career over another. Um, we love that kind of experience. You know, you've had that kind of experience. You've been there, you've been in the trenches, you know what the work is like. You're already a team player. Certainly that's meaningful experience. So we really we do place importance on it, but we don't prioritize that over someone else who hasn't had a career. They're coming out of their undergraduate senior year and have done, a lot of other things. So there's no one magical answer.
But I do think many individuals who had some time since college, they often have more of an opportunity to do some of these experiences, nursing, other clinical experiences. That does make in some ways a stronger application for the experience part. It may not be about the academic whatever grades part, but it's at the other, again, we consider all those things. And so it really depends on, again, the constellation of those things in each individual candidate.
Um, People wanting to know, is having leadership positions an advantage?
Experience in leadership is important, sure. Certainly, as a physician, often it's required that you lead your group that you're working with, but it's also just as important to demonstrate that you are a great team player. So I think having the opportunity, or if you've had a great leadership position, then certainly that's important. We want to hear about it.
But not required. Again, only remember leaders, just by definition, there are only a few of those. So so being a follower on a team is just it can be just as important. Again, it's what you feel that brings to healthcare or what you feel like you've learned from that that's relevant to medicine. You could be a follower too. So don't feel like you have to be a leader. I think people confuse that with it's kind of like the introvert question. People think if they're introverted, they can't, be in medicine. That's just absolutely not true. In fact, I think most of us are introverts. We've had to come out of our shell over time in certain ways, but many individuals in medicine are introverts and not leaders. I don't know if I ever had a leadership position. I know I didn't actually applying to medical school.
Yeah, and in order for you to be a good leader, you have to be a good team player first before anything else. So, and leadership is not something that it's an innate ability. It's a learned skill or process. Um, this is we're ending, and so one last question for each of you before you leave is, what is one piece of advice would you give to applicants that wanting to follow in your footsteps, and also one thing that you learned in your career that you wish you knew before you started going into medicine?
Um, wow, that's a lot. I would say, first of all, give yourself grace. That's, I think, the most important thing you could do at any point in your career, throughout your career. Give yourself grace. Give yourself grace to make mistakes, take the wrong road, find the right road, and lose it again, and then find it again, because it takes grace with yourself to then have that ability to offer it to others. That's one. And two, really always ask yourself, what can I do for someone else? You have to ask yourself that as a physician every day.
Yeah, I mean, the piece of advice I would give is, and I know this is a cliche, but I think it's hard to do. It's related to what Dr. Shakiri said, but it's I think of that, maybe I said this a couple years ago, but it's like the movie Aladdin. I mean, I like kids movies. Disney movie Aladdin, the genie, there's a scene where Aladdin is about to go on a date with Jasmine on a magic carpet ride, and he's scared. He's nervous, and the genie turns into, he's always turning into different stuff, that turns into a bee and he starts buzzing around Aladdin. And all he keeps saying to him is, be yourself, be yourself. That's my advice. And again, it gets so tempting not to do so. Okay, and if yourself means going off to Paris, like Dr. Shakiri said, or whatever that is, that other path to follow it, take those risks that are deep in your heart. I think that can eventually lead you to where you need to go. Um, and I think the second part of the question, I don't know if maybe I should. What was the second question? You asked two, Jubin. Oh, what will we do differently? Was that it?
If
No,
yeah, if what you learned today after years in medicine, if you could go back into redoing it, and what's one thing you would learn that you would tell yourself?
you want me to go?
Gosh.
I would say, you know, tell yourself it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
It'll be okay. And take those opportunities. I think there's a Chinese proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, yeah, I think like, if there's a regret or something I would know now, yeah, that maybe I didn't know then would be, and I think we said this at the beginning of this presentation, both of us, is that those parts of your life, whether it's your family, your personal life, these things are just as important, and you need to follow your heart. This is sort of, and I think if putting those things first whenever they come is really is okay. And I think that's hard in medicine. People think that you have to put medicine above all that, and I think that's an error. That's a mistake. So, um, your personal well-being, your family, like Dr. Shakiri spoke to her having her children, the same thing in my case. Those things are really, really important parts of your life. You're going to regret not kind of pursuing them. Um, and sometimes people there was a question about having a family. Sometimes people, it's a lot more complicated than you think. So if you wait forever, then you regret that. So again, trying to balance those things, uh, your personal life, your personal goals, your aspirations as an individual, as a human being, just as important as the ones that we've been talking about here in medicine.
Alrighty, well, I'm sure we could keep you all here till 10 o'clock at night, but we all have to go. And I know Dr. Shakiri's at work and trying to do her procedures and doing this. So thank you again. And Dr. Henderson's on the road traveling. So thank you both for joining us today. And I hope that you all could return again in the near future. And have a wonderful weekend. And also, Dr. Shakiri, happy Mother's Day tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good luck
And
to you
and
all.
and and happy Mother's Day to your better half, Dr. Henderson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
That's right.
you.
It's definitely better. She's definitely better.
She's definitely yes.
It's
Bye.
been
Thank you.
such a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you again.
pleasure. Bye bye.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.